All right, bettors, it looks like one of the GOATs of MMA fighting, Georges St-Pierre, went on Area 52's podcast with Chris Ramsay to sit down for, honestly, a phenomenal conversation, and I've got some clips for you. Now, I actually have a little MMA experience myself back in the day. Here's some footage. Clearly. Could you guys see me fighting? I mean, come on. Let's be real. I couldn't even fight myself out of a plastic bag, y'all. All right. So, look, let's get to this interview with Georges St-Pierre. Again, one of the GOATs of UFC. This is such a cool conversation. I'm a big fan of UFC and have watched GSP fight many, many times. And it's great to see him go on Chris Ramsay's show and discuss the phenomena, because what he has to say is quite fascinating.
15 years ago, I was in Albuquerque, and we were on a road, and we experienced something that night.
We roll down our windows and we look out, and we just see like this, UFO.
Sort of coming towards us. And then it changed direction, and then it changed again the direction, and it skipped. And it disappeared.
Because this is also something mentioned by Bob Lazar. Mm-hmm. And you had an opportunity to meet Bob.
Yeah.
Did you bring this up to him?
I did. Fast forward a few years, now I'm in Washington, so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna ask that big question. So I told the lady in front of me, and as I'm talking to her, the entire table stopped talking. They all the attention turned on me. You know, I just want to ask you, is there something out there? And she told me, you're not crazy. There's something out there. I was like, boom! Like, oh my God. During COVID, after I retired, I decided to go on a journey. I decided to do ayahuasca. When it started, I start leaving my body. I start levitating, and I'm not leaving my body going up like this. I'm leaving it going up like this, looking down.
You're seeing yourself?
Yeah. I even see my friend. He was texting someone. I told him, I said, you were texting this person. And he said, how did you know? I said, I went over your shoulder, man. I saw it. And I'm not alone. There's something that sort of lift me up. And I'm gonna draw it to you. No eyes, no mouth. Yeah. And it was communicating with me. You know, who are you? And it says, I'm you and everybody in the same time. I'm the air you breathe and the water you drink.
I'm the air you breathe and the water you drink.
I know why you're here. You're curious to know about what is consciousness, and I'm going to show it to you. And then I see the map, the planet, the solar system. It's like I'm going out. Like I zoom out, you know, from where I was, and I see the galaxies, the universe, the different dimension, to the point that at one point I'm like, it's too much, I can't take it anymore.
1994, I was probably about 6 years old, and I remember my big sister running outside from inside our house. I follow her out into the street. We get out into the street. The neighbors are out looking up at the sky. 4 or 5 houses down, there's a spinning disc with spinning lights all around it, and a spotlight coming down from the center. It must have been 40 feet above this house that was 5 houses down from us. Don't remember anybody talking about it afterwards. The memory just ends right there.
So there's a nice preview of the interview that you'll get. Link in the description. Go check it out. It's a phenomenal conversation between GSP and Chris Ramsay. They dive in deep to a lot of things. Clearly, GSP is going to reveal, some personal experiences that he had. And honestly, from a vulnerable position as well, considering his stature. You could tell in the interview he's a little concerned about maybe even mentioning some of this stuff and the precautions he took to go about even investigating some of these bigger questions, that we have in life, right? And one part in particular that I'm going to focus on here on the next clip is the story that he tells of seeing a UFO, right, on a dark desert highway, to quote, the Eagles here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? Him and his crew see something spectacular, right? But there's one part in particular about this story that I want to focus on after I show you the clip. And it's something that I find interesting that relates to all UFO sightings and even experiences, right, in general. Take a look.
15 years ago, I was in Albuquerque, and I was in a car, and I was with Mike Van Arsdale, who's a former UFC fighter, Rashad Evans, Ali Abdelaziz, who was Khabib and Islam Makhachev manager, who was a training partner of mine, and another guy named Alejandro. He's a Mexican, but I can't remember. I don't know what he became. I lost contact with him. And Alejandro and I were in the backseat. Mike Van Arsdale was driving. Rashad Evans was on the passenger seat. And we were on a road, and we saw something. We experienced something that night that all five of us, like, it's undeniable. Like, something, we saw something, like, and
Well, what did you see? Was it like lights in the sky, or was it?
Yeah, it was a light sort of coming towards us. And when it happened, I had an impression, and I don't have it's not a certainty, but I was under the impression that sort of the time sort of stopped. Not the car, but the car kept rolling. But, like, you know, when you get so intensely,
Like you're mesmerized.
yeah, like all of us were like we only had focus on that thing. So it came towards us, and then it changed direction, and then it changed again the direction, and it skipped, and it disappeared. And for that brief moment, it's sort of like everything else around us didn't matter. It was only this. Like, we were, like, all of us, like silence, and we saw this thing. And after that, when it skipped and it disappeared, all of us were like, oh my God, what is this? And the crazy thing about it is the way I saw it and the way my friends saw it, it was different, because there's no point of reference. I saw something that there was no wings, there was no, like, it was no noise, but we were inside of a car. But I remember seeing an interview of, I think it was Rashad or Ali Abdelaziz, talking about that thing.
Like around 2010, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm with GSP, Ali Abdelaziz, who's now like the manager of a lot of UFC fighters. And we're right on the highway. The traffic is starting to slow down. It like slows down to like almost a crawl. And we're like, why is everybody stopping? Why is everybody stopping? And then we start to look and see where everybody's looking. And then we roll down our windows and we look out, and we just see like this, I mean, UFO. Because of the way it was moving, it just didn't, I mean, it was that typical UFO movement where it was like moving, and then it like would stop and like defying gravity for a bit, and then it just stayed there for a second. And you know, the light pattern was weird as well too. And as everybody's sitting there watching it, it then just like shot off.
And the time that it lasts, and it didn't correspond to exactly what I saw. So I was thinking, if I talk about it publicly, I'm gonna look like a liar, because they don't describe the same thing. They all have their different description of what they've seen. Like, I remember, I think it was one of them said it was like almost a minute, and for me it was only maybe 10, 15 seconds, if I remember.
Wow.
So we all have a different experience from that moment.
So I think stories like that, I think there are so many stories like that that people have never told, right? That nobody knows about. They've never been reported, right? Because I don't think any of those guys reported that sighting, right? Like, how many people have sightings like that they just don't report, right? That I think it's unquantifiable, to be honest with you. Now, you know, that's a very interesting story, and I can't imagine being in that car and seeing something like that, you know. But what I find most interesting about this story is the fact that all the guys saw something different and experienced something different. because I think that speaks to just the human condition, right? How we take things in. They've done experiments and stuff for like, you know, in college campuses where they'll have, you know, a college course, right? You know, a whole class set up, and something will happen in the class, like a fake robbery or something, right? A fake theft right in front. A crime, right, gets committed. Then they, you know, the people run out of the classroom, and then they ask the students, okay, what did you see? Describe the people. What happened, right? Witness testimony, right? And then you start to realize so many people are all over the place, right? Describing the assailants completely different, right? Even getting race, gender wrong, height, weight, right? Like all these different details that you would think they would get, right? What happened exactly, how many people were there, right? Like all these things end up being wrong. How long it took, you know, because there's a lot of interpretation when it comes to something you see, right? You can describe physical details, but when you start to talk about like how it made you feel, time, you know, different things that we experience differently, that's where it starts to get a little interesting, because it's not a shared experience, right? In that sense. And it's really hard to convince somebody that what you saw is what you think you saw, right? But it's also one of those things where like, how much can we trust this thing up here? To what extent? Because our brains are literally wired, and they make mistakes. We perceive things wrong, or we interpret them wrong, right? From a universal truth, right? Point of view, right? And I just find that fascinating, because the thing we're using to try to understand everything around us, and the thing we're using, like we use the thing, you know, our brains to try to understand our brains, right? That's complicated, right? That becomes very complicated. And I think the biggest mystery in the universe is our mind. Because what if the phenomena is the mind? I still find that a fascinating explanation and answer, right? No matter what is happening, something is happening, right? There is this phenomena, and they talk about this in the interview, Chris and Georges St-Pierre, right? Like something is going on, right? The problem is, what is that thing? Now, if all these people experience a certain thing and start saying, I saw something, it moved weird, you know, this and that, that means aliens right away? Why don't we ever look inward at our brain and go, maybe our minds are messing with us? Well, but could they be messing with so many people? Yeah, why not? Why is that such a crazy conspiracy, right? Why is that not any less valid than extraterrestrials, right? That's just very interesting, especially when you start mixing in substances, right? And Georges St-Pierre talks about an experience in the interview of doing ayahuasca, which many people have done. I myself have, you know, thought about giving it a go, curious about it for sure. But, you know, if you take substances and then you see things, I mean, that's like, I don't know how much I would include that into my real world perspective, right? If anything, I think how crazy the mind is that it can create those sort of things. I mean, have you had dreams before? Right? Some of those dreams are crazy. You're doing crazy things in crazy places, you know. So I'm just saying, the phenomena exist in our mind too, and we use that, which is capable of making many mistakes and altering our perceptions, right, to try to understand that thing. But you know, I would also argue, what choice do we have? Right? It's not like we can separate ourselves from our brain, so we're kind of stuck there. But I will say, it is, on the flip side, it is fascinating to hear a story like this from GSP, because, again, how many people out on these dark highways have had experiences like this that never get reported? I think there's something to that. But, again, I think we should just all consider that the mind and it playing games with us should be one of the considered solutions to this problem, right? I agree that there's something going on, but why can't that be one of the solutions, right? one of the theories of origin, right? You've got aliens, interdimensional, is it God? What about our own mind just playing games with us? Why can't that be one of them, right? Advanced tech from another country, our own advanced tech, but what about our mind? Why can't that be part of it, right? Because how much can we trust the things that we see, hear, touch, feel, right? And because we're all wired uniquely, every human being that's ever lived and that lives and that will live, that's complicates things, right? That complicates things, which is why the scientific method, you remove witness testimony, right? What a person sees. It doesn't matter if someone's a scientist, the smartest person in the world versus, not the smartest person in the world, just the bottom of the barrel, someone who just doesn't have it all there, right? Either or of their witness testimony means the exact same. Doesn't matter, right? You need to be able to prove it, right, with instruments and tools outside of the mind so that it, can be considered a universal truth, right? A universal shared experience. But either way, conversations like the one GSP and Chris had are fascinating. I love these kind of conversations and listening to them. And GSP comes from such a authentic, natural place of just trying to figure out what's going on, trying to understand the experiences he's had, right? And try to then fit it into, the book of life, essentially, right? Like, how does he then fit those things into what he thinks about the world, right? And I think we can all, no matter if you're one of the greatest fighters of all time or, working at McDonald's, we all struggle with the same questions, right? We all struggle with the same mysterious experiences that we may have had and not understand what it is, and that's kind of cool. That connects us in a way, right? These questions, because it pushes away everything else that's superficial in this world, right? And we get to the nitty gritty of who we are as humans and, what are we doing here? And if there is no main purpose for us to be here, then we get to decide that purpose, right? For ourselves. And yeah, I just, again, find these sort of conversations fascinating. Let me know if you've seen something on a dark desert road, right? Put it down in the comments if you've had a sighting like that that's very similar to GSP's. And again, link in the description. Go check out this interview with Chris Ramsay. It's absolutely phenomenal. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.